Nobody predicted this. Not the audience, not the producers, and definitely not the people who thought her moment would end at the villa. Because in less than a year, Alandria didn't just show up in elite spaces. She took them over. Golden Globes, Paris, Netflix, high fashion. And suddenly, the same industry that usually ignores reality stars couldn't stop posting her. But here's the part that made people uncomfortable. This didn't feel accidental. It felt chosen. Like the internet crowned her first, and the industry followed right behind. And once that door opened, everything started moving fast. Because what happened next didn't just change her visibility. It quietly changed her career forever. The night everyone keeps pointing back to didn't start as a big announcement. No dramatic rollout. No long build-up. She simply stepped onto the Golden Globes carpet, and the internet froze. Within minutes, clips were everywhere. Screenshots. Slow-motion edits. Side-by-side comparisons. People weren't just reacting to what she wore. They were questioning what they were seeing. Some swore she looked unreal. Others joked she had to be AI. A living doll, they said. And while that might sound like internet exaggeration, the numbers told a different story. She became one of the most talked about faces of the entire night, pulling in tens of millions of views while seasoned celebrities barely crossed a fraction of that. For an event known for A-list dominance, that alone raised eyebrows. What made it even louder was who joined the conversation. Official award show accounts reposted her. Major fashion pages zoomed in. Global publications didn't just include her, they centered her. Suddenly, she wasn't being discussed because she was there. She was being discussed as the moment. And once that shift happened, there was no going back. Because when the internet decides someone stands out at a room full of power, the industry listens. But the attention didn't stop at the carpet. It turned into something much more strategic. Almost immediately, the tone of the conversation changed. This wasn't just about beauty anymore. It became about value. Because the moment luxury fashion gets involved, the question stops being who looks good and starts becoming who can sell. She didn't show up in a random gown. She wore a custom look by Christian Siriano, a name that doesn't gamble on visibility. And what happened next made the industry pay attention fast. Sketches inspired by her Golden Globes look were released online, quietly at first. Then they sold out. Not slowly. Not over a few days. Instantly. That's when the narrative shifted. This wasn't hype with no follow-through. This was proof. People weren't just watching her, they were buying into her. And in fashion, that's the difference between a moment and a career. Luxury analysts started clocking it too. Her name landed near the top of lists tracking the most talked about celebrity and brand pairings of the night, ranked higher than established global stars. For someone who wasn't supposed to be in those rooms, that placement spoke volumes. Because fashion doesn't move on feelings. It moves on data. And the data was clear. Attaching her name meant attention, clicks, and real money. And once that signal went out, it didn't just attract designers. It pulled in something even bigger. This is usually where the momentum dies. A viral night fades, fashion moves on, and the industry quietly closes the door again. But that didn't happen here. Instead, something rare took place. The gatekeepers leaned in. Major publications didn't wait months to validate her. Vogue. Elle. Glamour. Not tucked into recap slides or best of social media roundups, but featured like she belonged there. And that distinction matters. Because those platforms don't elevate moments. They elevate people they believe have staying power. Then came the language shift. Official accounts weren't calling her influencer or reality star. They framed her like a fixture. Even the Golden Globes themselves described her in almost mythical terms, reinforcing the idea that she wasn't just attending the event. She was enhancing it. That kind of framing doesn't happen by accident. It signals alignment. It tells brands, networks, and stylists that this person is safe to bet on, that associating with her won't feel forced or temporary. And once that stamp of approval lands, Doors open faster than anyone expects. Because now the question wasn't whether she belonged in those spaces. It was who would claim her first. And that's exactly when Netflix stepped in. Netflix didn't ease into it. They went all in, and they did it loudly. When she appeared at the Bridgerton Season 4 premiere in Paris, she wasn't treated like a guest. She was treated like an asset. She was one of the first faces Netflix posted across their platforms. Not buried in a carousel. Not after the cast. Front and center. Then came the moment that made people double-take. The official bio change. Bridgerton Alandria. A subtle tweak, but a powerful one. Because global brands don't adjust their branding unless they know exactly what they're doing. This wasn't fan service. It was marketing math. Netflix had already seen what happened at the Golden Globes. They knew her name sparked conversation, screenshots, reposts. And instead of resisting that wave, they surfed it. What made it even smarter was the timing. The show didn't need saving, it needed amplification. And attaching her image guaranteed people would talk, even if they were already planning to watch. That's the difference between relevance and domination. In that moment, it became clear she wasn't just benefiting from the spotlight, she was driving it. She didn't blend into the event. She shifted the energy of it. And from there, the pattern became impossible to ignore. At this point, it stopped feeling like coincidence. One major appearance can be written off as luck. Two can be called momentum. But by the third and fourth, a pattern forms, and the industry notices patterns. She wasn't popping up at random events. VMAs, CFDA Fashion Awards, the Golden Globes, then Paris. Each invite carried more weight than the last. These aren't spaces where visibility is handed out freely, especially to someone whose career didn't start in traditional Hollywood. What stood out wasn't just that she was there, it was how she showed up. The looks were intentional. The glam was consistent. The presence felt controlled. Every appearance reinforced the same message. She belongs here, and she's not experimenting, she's establishing. Fashion watchers started anticipating her arrivals. Red carpet pages posted her separately. Comment sections filled before she even stepped out. That's when you know someone has crossed a line. When people don't react to what you wore, they wait to see what you'll wear. And once that expectation locks in, you're no longer chasing relevance. You're setting it. But behind the scenes, something else was quietly lining up. And the hints were starting to slip. This is where the conversation shifted from observation to speculation. And it's important to frame it that way. Nothing was officially announced. No press releases. No confirmations. Just breadcrumbs that people who watch the fashion world closely couldn't ignore. It started with her glam team. Fans noticed her longtime makeup artist engaging with comments hinting at upcoming work in Paris. Then came the timing. Travel posts. Location clues. Subtle replies that suggested more than they said outright. Enough to spark questions without crossing into confirmation. Then there were the follows. Luxury creative directors don't casually follow people they aren't considering. It doesn't guarantee a deal, but it signals interest. And in fashion, interest is often the first public step before anything becomes official. Online chatter picked up fast. Some claimed she was preparing for Paris Fashion Week. Others suggested Couture Week might be involved. Again, these were rumors, fueled by timing, proximity, and industry behavior, not confirmed facts. But the buzz itself was telling. Because people weren't asking if she'd be there. They were asking where she'd appear. And when speculation reaches that point, it usually means something bigger is forming behind closed doors. Here's the part that doesn't get talked about enough. Hype alone doesn't keep doors open. Brands don't invest long-term because someone is trending. They invest because someone is predictable in the right ways. What sets her apart is control. She doesn't overshare. She doesn't chase controversy. She doesn't rely on shock to stay visible. Every appearance feels measured, polished, and intentional. which is exactly what luxury brands look for when deciding who represents them. There's also consistency. The image never clashes with the setting. Whether it's a red carpet, a fashion event, or a global premiere, she shows up aligned with the space she's entering. That tells brands she understands the assignment and won't dilute their image. And then there's relatability without mess. She feels aspirational, but not untouchable. Confident, but not chaotic. That balance is rare, and it makes her easy to market across multiple audiences without risk. This is why companies aren't treating her like a short-term collaboration. They're positioning her as someone who can grow with the brand, not outgrow it overnight. Which brings us to the conversation critics keep trying to have, and why it keeps falling flat. This is usually where the pushback comes in. The reminders. The labels. The attempts to shrink the moment by pointing backward instead of forward. Some people still want to frame her as just a reality TV alum, as if that's a ceiling she's supposed to stay under. But the industry doesn't move based on where someone started. It moves based on what works. And right now, what works is her. The truth is, plenty of people leave the villa with visibility. Very few turn that visibility into access. And even fewer hold on to that access long enough for it to compound. That's the difference people keep overlooking. What's happening here isn't a fluke or favoritism. It's selection. She wasn't pushed through every door, she was pulled through them. By brands. By publications. By platforms that don't gamble on maybes. And that's why the conversation keeps shifting. Because when someone consistently shows up in spaces they supposedly don't belong in, the narrative has to adjust. At this point, the question isn't whether she's moved beyond the villa. It's how far past it she's already gone. Moments burn bright, then fade. That's how it usually goes. But this doesn't feel like a spike. It feels like a build. Every move stacks on the last one instead of replacing it, and that's how careers quietly lock in longevity. Fashion is the clue. Red carpets lead to editorials. Editorials lead to campaigns. Campaigns lead to global recognition. It's a pipeline the industry has used for decades, and once someone is inside it, the growth isn't loud, it's strategic. What's happening now suggests positioning, not overexposure. She's visible, but not everywhere. Present, but not exhausting. That balance allows anticipation to grow instead of fatigue. People don't feel overwhelmed by her. They feel curious. And curiosity is powerful. It keeps names circulating even when someone isn't actively posting or promoting. It creates space for bigger announcements instead of forcing them. If the past year was about proving she belongs, the next phase is about deciding where she lands permanently. And based on the signals so far, she's not being lined up for a side role. She's being set up for a long run. What makes this story different isn't the speed, it's the certainty. At some point, the conversation stopped being about whether this would last and started focusing on how high it could go. That shift doesn't happen unless the industry has already made up its mind. She didn't force her way into these rooms. She didn't beg for relevance. The doors opened because the attention followed her, and the power players decided it was smarter to move with her than against the wave. That's not luck. That's alignment. And that's why this moment feels bigger than one person. It's a reminder of how quickly the narrative changes when someone proves they can carry visibility, pressure, and expectation, all at the same time. The villa was the introduction. Everything after that was the confirmation. And now, the only real question left is this. When the next major moment happens, will people still be surprised, or will they finally admit they saw this coming?